Welcome into NHL Tonight, first shift. EJ Hradek here, along with my buddy, the one and only.
Okay.
The Grim Reaper.
That's a nice welcome.
Stu Grimson,
Yeah.
first time on first shift.
Yeah.
So welcome aboard.
Here's my experience with a first shift. In my position, career fourth line left winger, you better be good on your first shift because there may not be a second shift.
And when you were out for the first shift, it was usually eventful. It was usually a purpose.
There were often fireworks.
Yes.
There were often fireworks.
There were
no question
purpose.
about it.
Let's bring in our great producer, JD. Well, I want JD to welcome Stu to the program here for Wednesday, October the 16th. There we go. We have this opportunity.
All right, JD. I did not realize you were jumping in on us. Wonderful.
Every now and again, you know, I like to show my face here. Each likes to chop it up.
Yeah.
Not to give away the game too much, but I heard you guys talking right before we came on the air. EJ, I also have not seen The Notebook.
All right, there you go. We were talking about, because Stu has his notebook here. And
I've got my notebook, and it brought up that movie of the 90s, maybe early 2000s.
Yeah, maybe, you know. Well, maybe we'll find some time during the year. Me and you will sit down.
Sure.
Doubtful.
I should watch it again because I can't remember much what I saw.
There you go.
Yeah.
There you go. Well, let's get to first things first. And we got some, last night in Columbus, it's obviously heartbreaking what has happened with Johnny and Matt Gaudreau.
Yeah.
And you see the Columbus Blue Jackets in their home opening game, raising the banner to the rafters, and there you can see Keith Gaudreau and his wife Jane, the family there. Just an emotional night for everybody there, and I think really for both teams, because look at this at the start of the games too. What did you think of this?
This was, full marks to the Columbus Blue Jackets organization. The creativity that they employed, and the breadth of the tribute that they paid to Johnny and his brother Matthew on this night. And to, the execution, EJ, it was just all so well done, so thoughtful, so inspiring. Hockey fans are crying, hockey coaches are crying.
Yeah, Dean Evison, you can see he was really wonderful. And, Dean is new to Columbus, right? Like, this is his first year. Don Waddell is...
As is their manager.
Yeah, first year in Columbus. Yeah. So, this is one of those things that just, it breaks our hearts in the hockey family. And even outside, I know I talk to people, when people know that I'm in hockey, it's something that during that window, when the horrible news broke, people would immediately bring it up to me. And it's just awful what happened, but it was just a beautiful ceremony last night, and people reaching out and trying to help the Gaudreau family, as they deal with their grief and their sorrow.
And pay their respects to the Gaudreau family. For somebody in my position, especially in the era that I played, what I was so struck with is hockey, for those folks that may not, kind of follow it at a really granular level, we are kind of it's an old boys network. It's a throwback mentality because of, I think, the physical element of our game. What I mean by that, clubs tend to operate in their own silos. There's not a lot of interaction, so that when you see, two teams and really the entire NHL community come together in this way across those boundaries that divide one club from another, and pay their respects to really one of the great and dynamic players to have ever played our game, and a guy that had such a hearty enthusiasm and love for our game. I was really deeply moved by that. The face-off itself, right? So it's the tap out to the wing. Sean Monahan taps it out to the wing to a former teammate, Sam Bennett, on the other side of this matchup, and then we pause for 13 seconds to honor his number. I thought, brilliantly done. Such a tender, sweet moment. And here's the other thing I thought too, EJ. I think there will be remembrances, traditions, and little mementos, league-wide, but certainly where this Columbus organization is concerned, that remind us of the loss of Johnny and Matthew long after you and I are gone from this planet.
Yeah.
I really do believe that. I think I just felt like it was such a broad, a comprehensive, and such a well thought out tribute. This will survive long beyond us.
Yeah, and then they got off almost to the fairy tale start with Sean Monahan scoring the first goal of the game and pointing up at the banner. And, those two so close, and that's really why Sean came to Columbus as a free agent to play with Johnny, and you see it.
Yeah, and you know what I loved about this goal? It's not your typical, dance two defenders and tuck it up under the bar. This was for Sean Monahan. a gritty goal, an inspired goal, and it took a lot of guts and determination to get there. And I got this impression from the entire Columbus Blue Jackets roster. They met a formidable foe in the defending Stanley Cup champions on this night. But you could see moments like Monahan, and especially those last 2 or 3 minutes of the game, trying to get back into this game. These guys were just trying to will it across the line, and not for themselves, not necessarily even for the colors, but in remembrance of Johnny and Matthew.
Yeah, and it came right down to the wire, and it took a Spencer Knight, big save by Spencer Knight in the last 2 minutes of the game to keep to solidify the win for the Florida Panthers. So really a touching night in Columbus, and kudos to the Blue Jackets, their whole organization, for handling this. It's the best they could, and really a lovely tribute to Johnny. And hopefully Guy and the family will be around, I would imagine, a lot this year in Columbus as they try to move through a very, very difficult, I can't even imagine, a difficult time for them. We had obviously other games around the National Hockey League last night. The Edmonton Oilers our focus has been on kind of what's wrong with the Oilers. A lot of people picking them to win the Cup. They went to the final last year, lost Game 7 2-1. They were right there. They start the season 0-3, get outscored 15-3. Last night, Stu, down 2-0 to Philly early in that game, but they rally, and there it is in overtime. Leon Draisaitl, who was benched for a couple of shifts.
He was.
For taking a really selfish penalty in that game. And I think you need. Let me ask you. You've been on the benches. You're played in the league a long time. It's hard to bench star players.
Yeah.
But you do sometimes have to send the message to everyone.
Yeah. Do you know what the thing that players look for most? Not most. There are many things. Leadership is a vast kind of a term. But what players really focus on day-to-day life, as a coach enters a program, are you communicating a standard? Are you installing a standard for performance whereby all these players have to adhere to? And I think Coach Knobloch really sends a message to the rest of the group where he's communicating even to a guy like Leon Draisaitl, hey, Leon, that's a bad penalty. You cost us opportunity at a really critical moment. You too are going to be held to that standard, and I think there's that fairness element that the fourth liners look for, even first liners look for. Everybody's got to kind of abide by. This is how the game is played. When you're an Edmonton Oiler, I give the coach full marks for that. Not an easy thing to do, especially when the game's right there within your reach. One of the things, just while we're on it. One of the things ailing this team right now, as you follow them from the start of the season, I had them coming into last night's game. They were 7 for 11 on the PK.
Yeah.
Number one, that's a lot of penalties to take over just a 3-game span, but 7 for 11. Let me say it another way for emphasis, EJ. The Edmonton Oilers took 11 penalties. The other team scored on 7 of those. 7 of those opportunities. Yeah. That's not good. You should be 2, 3 at worst over an 11 PK stretch. But they eventually got it sorted out to ultimately go on and win this one. This is an interesting team to keep an eye on as we go forward.
You know what's funny, too, about the penalty killing, Stu? Last year in the postseason, remember, they got on a roll killing penalties. Yeah. I mean, they were like a plus team.
Yeah.
In the penalty killing situation. They were scoring shorthanded goals. In that Stanley Cup final series against Florida, I think they had a couple of shorthanded goals. They weren't allowing much on the power play. So it's funny. We flip over to a new year.
Yeah.
There's maybe some changes in some of the personnel. The urgency level maybe isn't quite there.
Right. And
all of a sudden, you're not as successful because they've got to obviously have to clean that up. You can't go through the season like that.
And I don't think really, given the circumstances, it's possible to overstate the importance of, yes, the way the PK is playing, the penalty kill is playing, but the volume of penalties they're taking, it's symptomatic, emblematic of a lot of things. Flat starts, failure to respect your opponent. Leon Draisaitl, for example, the penalty he took last night, there was just nothing to be gained by cross-checking another player who the puck was nowhere near those two guys.
That was the definition of cross-checking, I think, pretty straightforward, right?
Yeah.
Like right across the back.
100%. 100%.
Nothing to do with the play.
Nothing at all to do with the play. And, on the other side, symptoms of poor play, when you're on the man at disadvantage for that long. You're taking your forwards, your McDavids and your Draisaitl's out of a rhythm, your third and fourth line out of a rhythm, and you're, put it this way, 4 penalties in the first period alone. That's 8 minutes of hockey. You are battening down the hatches and fending off the attack, hold up in your own zone. Not for nothing, I didn't think Skinner was sharp early in this one, but he kind of played his way into. They owe Skinner a good bit for just, kind of stabilizing things to some degree. I thought he made some important stops at key times to just give this group a chance to be in it late.
What do you think of those tilts in the third period? Corey
like
Perry and Troy Stecher getting involved, right? I mean,
yeah. You and I were remarking before. Yeah, so this is that's a no-brainer.
And this fight went on for a while.
I give Stecher a lot of credit.
Not the biggest guy.
Not the biggest guy.
No.
He gives Couturier, in addition to experience, a few inches and maybe 15 pounds-ish. And he held his own on that, but you love where that comes from. There's probably accidental on Couturier's part. I don't think he was trying to get anything stirred up, but you still want to answer for it. For a guy like Stecher to step into the gap, his stock grew in that room for having done all that. Corey Perry's a completely different story. That's a moment later in the game when he senses that this group needs some inspiration. He wants to change the energy, trying to transform the momentum. And, you and I talked about this off air earlier. For a guy like Corey Perry, who was rattling off 40, 50 goals a year at an earlier stage in his career, now at a very senior stage in his career, willing to do whatever it takes. And trust me, 0-3 out of the gate, these Edmonton Oilers, it takes something like that to maybe contribute to a turnaround. And Perry, Lord love him, his respect for the game and willingness to do whatever it takes, regardless of his former role. He too gets a bit of a shot in the arm for all that.
Yeah, he loves playing in the National Hockey League.
He sure does.
He's going to hold on to it as long as he can, and he's got a nice role there at Edmonton.
Such a gamer.
Yeah,
such a gamer.
That's the right.
He plays a really brash brand of hockey.
Yeah.
And he's a pain in the tuchus when he's on the other side, but you love him when he's part of your roster.
No
He brings a
question.
lot to the mix.
No question about it. So the Oilers back in action on Thursday. Let's get to the schedule tonight. We got 4 games on the docket for you. Sabres and Penguins at 7, Kings and Maple Leafs at 7:30, 9:30, Bruins and Avs, and then at 10 o'clock, the Ducks with their home opener against the Utah Hockey Club. But I want to start with the Avalanche, Stu, and take a look at these numbers to start the season. This is not what they anticipated, and so much so, it's funny, they lost to the Islanders the other night. Cale Makar had a tough game. He was hard on himself afterwards. Take a listen.
3 of their 6 goals, 4 of their 6 goals directly my fault, so that's just how it goes. Some really stupid, childish mistakes, and those things that you got to learn from. But I got to be better for the guys, and I think a lot of that one's on me. Just not moving my feet, not playing my game, and just kind of where it's at right now. So, I'm hard on myself, but at the end of the day, I got to be better for these guys. It's definitely a lot closer game if I don't play tonight. So.
Wow. For Cale Makar to say it's a lot closer game if I'm not playing in it is kind of crazy. You can see the numbers here. The points are there for these guys. 5 points, 4 points over the 3 games, but they're just getting really beat up in the D zone. Goaltenders are struggling. D coverage is bad. What did we make of the Avs so far?
Yeah, I think goaltending is a key element. Georgiev has not been. He just really almost since being a member of this organization, he's been short of the form we saw while a member of the New York Rangers organization. I think there's better hockey from Georgiev in my estimation. But the thing that I find rather astonishing, we talk about, certainly in the Western Conference, just in terms of the caliber of the D-corps that Colorado trots out on any given night, is it's just kind of astonishing to see this group underperforming in the way that they have. I think they get it figured out. They've got great depth. But goaltending remains a key question for me. Can Georgiev be a mechanic to his own game and give this group some consistent outings in his assignments. Failing that, I mean, this is true of just about any organization out there. You need serviceable goaltending if you're going to be playing in the back half of April.
Yeah, he's ridden some waves. He's been very good for stretches, and on other stretches he really struggles. We'll see if he can get it turned around. They've got the kid Kokkonen, who they picked up off waivers, and he's having some visa issues. But he's a guy that's had some stretches in his career. Started in Minnesota, moved on to San Jose, finished last year with New Jersey. So if he can get into the mix there, maybe he can steal that crease for a while, because they're at this point, Stu, you know how it is. Whoever goes in there and plays well is going to play. Yeah,
exactly right. I mean, at this stage, it's anyone's net to earn, given what we've seen to this point. So it'll be an interesting story to follow, and potentially, just talking about this forward core, we've seen them deeper at different parts past seasons, but to get a Nichushkin back into the mix, and we're hearing that Landeskog may make an appearance, albeit he's not imminent, but adding some depth up front. You like the way that kind of bolsters this roster at the same time.
Yeah, I'll be curious to see how it looks tonight against the Boston Bruins team that, they've had their ups and downs so far through the first couple of games.
Yeah.
But, they usually play a button-down game, and it'll be challenging for Colorado. You can't give the Boston Bruins those kind of opportunities. They'll do the same thing the Islanders did. They'll take advantage.
Yeah, no question. I think you're spot on with your assessment of Boston since Montgomery's gotten behind the bench there, and not necessarily dressing out the most talented roster in the Eastern Conference. He's got these guys going in the right direction.
Yeah. Well, one other thing I wanted to touch on about tonight's games: the Utah Hockey Club back in action tonight.
Yeah.
They're in Anaheim, and we've been. You asked me when did we start? We started opening night. This, I believe, is our 7th show now. And the Utah Hockey Club, in that kind of span, they started at home, then they went on the road. They were in New York, went through all the teams there, had a good run, won 2 of the 3 games, and now they're out in Anaheim tonight on the other coast, taking on the Ducks. And 3 of these games are home openers for the respective teams. That always makes it maybe a little bit more difficult coming in. Everybody's revved up for the home opener, and you're sitting there as maybe the feast.
Yeah. There's,
Did you like being in that situation, or were you like, hey, this is a good time to spoil it?
There's a rallying cry in the visiting locker room, right? Let's rain on their parade, So and whatever the game is, whatever the matchup, whether it's the coaching staff or more internally the players, you're always kind of looking for that narrative. What's this one look like? What's this one mean? And really, this group is off to a really solid start. Many of us are kind of leaning in, thinking that's just the way they've improved their roster on paper and the way these brilliant young pieces are continuing to develop in front of us. So there's a lot to like in this roster. I do tend to believe the Ducks, in spite of the fact that this is their home opener, they got their hands full with the UHC.
There you go. And the Ducks 1-1 to start the season. Cutter Gauthier out there. They've got a lot of good young players as well. JD, you got a little nugget for me on the Ducks?
Yeah, well, I mean, we've got an original Mighty Duck in the building tonight,
That's
Stu.
true.
And these guys are actually dynamite in home openers. Check these numbers out.
Oh, wow.
Lawrence Goldstein brought this to my attention out in the bullpen. The man. They've won their last 8 home openers, the Ducks have. 10-0-1 in their last 11.
Wow.
How about this?
Strong numbers.
And you can see Mason McTavish. Big time. So for those of you maybe looking to make some sort of wager, there's some numbers that could help you out.
You saw that 3 way over at the far side of that home opener. Yeah, that was a 5-2 loss. The Detroit Red Wings handed us our tails. The very first home opener of the Ducks' entire organization. And the first fighting major, Probert Grimson, kind of got things sorted out late in that one.
How did it go?
I could have handled them all right, thanks.
Oh, really?
Thanks for asking. Yeah.
You're welcome. You're welcome. All right, I like that. All right, so the Ducks home opener tonight. We'll see if they can keep that streak alive. When we come back, we got a guest for you. We got the big man, Big Walt. Keith Tkachuk joins us to talk about his career, the career of his 2 sons, Matthew and Brady, and of course being part of that Stanley Cup in Florida. Keith Tkachuk, next. You talk about hockey families at the National Hockey League level. I don't know how it gets much better than the Tkachuk family. I mean, you have Keith, who played 1,200 games in the NHL, over 500 goals, and now his sons Matthew and Brady they're forging their own path. Matthew, part of a Stanley Cup champion last year with the Florida Panthers, and of course Brady, the captain of the Ottawa Senators. And let's bring in now the patriarch of the family, Keith Tkachuk. And Keith, thanks so much for the time. I got to just start, simple question. How was your summer?
It was a little rough. It was, I will say, it was a dream come true. Anytime you could see your son, hoist the Stanley Cup, it was a phenomenal experience for our family, our friends, and I was just so happy for Matthew, how much hard work he's put in, him along with his teammates, and be able to celebrate with that is something I'll never forget.
And, we're getting a little bit of a peek of that because most hockey fans know the Amazon Prime show is out, Face Off Inside the NHL, and you guys are prominently featured in that. And I'd ask you, first of all, did you watch it? If you watched it, what was your reaction? And if you didn't, why didn't you?
Well, no, I watched. I thought they did an incredible job. They really did. I think people want to see that. The fans want to see the inside of what goes on with players and how they approach games. And it just worked out so well. Obviously, my parents weren't too happy, or my mom wasn't too happy with the swearing from Matthew and I. So other than that, I thought they did an exceptional job.
What's it like to have have a crew like that embedded? I mean, they were at your guys' house. They were everywhere. Kind of Matthew went, you went. You're in the crowd watching the game. They're getting that raw reaction, which for us fans, I mean, and as for a lot of people, parents watching their sons have that kind of moment. It's special for us to get it. What was it like for you to have those cameras around you the whole time?
Well, we understood what we were getting into. I thought Matthew handled it really well. He obviously was 24/7 for him. Us, it was bits and pieces. But overall, the people were so great doing it. Obviously, it was just incredible, that journey. And, it was so much fun to do. And it just worked out so great. But, I got to give them a lot of credit. They handled it really well. And Matthew did an exceptional job.
Yeah, I would agree with you because it's one thing for people who aren't playing. I mean, you experienced that as a player for a long time. Matthew is actually having to play and perform and be part of that through the good and the bad, right? I mean, it was good in those first 3 games, and it wasn't as good those next 3 games if we get to Game 7. So I do give him a lot of credit. When you think back now, you've had a couple of months to think back on the experience. Have you been able to have it all sink in?
Yeah, I mean, it's still a dream come true for everybody in our family. It really is. I don't know. I look back, you still watch highlight clips and that show, and it just brings back so many great memories. I mean, the ups and downs, the travel. We tried to spend as much time as possible there during that time. And Matthew's so generous of letting us come around no matter what. And, you try to stay out of his way on game days, but what a journey, 32 teams. It's so hard to do nowadays. And you got to give the Florida Panthers a lot of credit. Bill Zito and Vinny Viola, who's an amazing owner. I mean, what they've done down there. And it's something we'll never forget. And
how about your barbecuing skills? It looked like you knew what you were doing behind that grill.
Well, Matthew's pretty useless. So unlike Brady can, does things on his own, but Matthew likes when I'm down there. So I do cook, and his fiance, Ellie, does a great job. So he just sits back and critiques us, but forgets that we're the ones doing all the work for him, which, hey, it was playoffs. I'll do anything for my children.
Yeah, there you go. Well, it was great to see that, and we had a good look at it through the series on Amazon Prime. I would tell hockey fans, check it out if you can. Let me ask you about Brady too, because obviously Matthew has achieved that ultimate goal. Brady is in Ottawa with the Senators team that I think is primed to maybe make a push this year. How did he handle all this in the offseason, seeing his brother win? It looked like he was really excited for him, and the relationship they have. What's on track for Brady now moving forward this year?
Well, first of all, I'm so grateful to have all my kids, but especially Brady. He was so supportive to Matthew. That's his best buddy. And, he was down there supporting him and wanted him to win so bad. And now he's, he has to chase his dream. We're all behind the scenes right now. We want Brady to accomplish that. And, they're off to a decent start up there. It's exciting. I went to the opening night versus Florida. very exciting game. Ottawa, they got guys back healthy. But Brady is determined to get his team in the playoffs, and they're going to have some ups and downs. They got some new faces. I'm so glad they got in some leadership there with David Perron and Cousins and guys like that. And obviously the goaltending is a huge piece to that pie. And, I think, they just got to stay afloat here for a little bit and not dig themselves a hole. But he's really happy in Ottawa. And the best part about it, going up there, I get to see my grandson.
Oh, there you go. Beautiful, beautiful. Hey, listen, he's under a lot of pressure, that poor kid. He's going to have to carry this on at some point.
Just let me handle the development. Everybody else that.
Hey, listen, you have a track record of success. So
I didn't say I wanted to get up at midnight to feed them. I said just the other part of it I'll take care of.
All right, there you go. There you go. Hey, I wanted to ask you also about your role. You're with the St. Louis Blues, director of recruitment. You're involved with scouting, their amateur scouting in particular. I want to ask you, when you look at young players and you watched, you had Brady and Matthew and you were involved in coaching and you saw all those good young players as they try to make it up the ladder. When you look at young players, what do you look for? What sticks out to you?
Well, going back to what I tell my kids, and my biggest thing is compete level and be a good teammate. Those are the two things I look for, character in players. And, guys are going to go do different growth spurts, but you just got to look at the projection and see where they're at and see what kind of body language they have is important for me. But that's the two things I look for, the compete in players and who's willing to go through the wall for their teammates, who does the little things. And obviously you got to have the skill, the skating, and you look at the way the teams win in this league now, you want to have some size. That's how Florida won. And you look at the teams like Edmonton, they're big teams, Dallas, the Rangers, these are the teams that are big. And you got to look for little qualities. But to me, it's the compete level, no doubt.
Well, we got up on the screen, you're a member of the USA Hockey Hall of Fame. I believe you're going to be in the Hall of Fame at some point soon. I mean, with the numbers you had, you're one of the great power forwards in your era. But one of your teammates, Jeremy Roenick, is going into the Hall of Fame next month. I mean, you've been alongside JR on different teams in different years, certainly Team USA and during your time in Arizona together. What do you think his speech is going to be like coming up next month?
Well, it's going to be a must-watch for sure. I mean, Jeremy is one of my closest friends. This guy will do anything for you, no matter what. And he played the game hard. He was a skilled guy. Came into the league, not as big as others. And, he could skate. He'll fight anybody. And he's obviously a dynamic skill set. He went into Chicago and just turned head as a young guy and continued to get better, and just a tremendous person, ambassador for the game. I mean, he sold the game in Arizona when we first got there. He's great with the fans. He's got a great personality. And I'm so happy for him and his family. He deserves it. He's an all-star. He's a tremendous person on and off the ice, and I'm very lucky to call him a friend.
All right. Well, listen, thanks so much, Keith, for the time today. We really appreciate it. Good luck with the Blues this year and your travels as you continue to recruit and scout players. And of course, we'll be keeping an eye on Matthew and Brady as they continue through the season. But thanks so much for the time.
Anytime, EJ. Thanks for having me.
All right. Big Walt, one of the great players in the history of this game, Keith Tkachuk. When we come back, we're going to take a look at what went on last night around the National Hockey League. Take a look at the season comparison thus far between the Buffalo Sabres and the Pittsburgh Penguins. Sabres 1-3. They got their first win on Saturday against the Florida Panthers, 5-2, so that's good news. Pittsburgh Penguins, they've split their first four, beat the Montreal Canadiens on Monday night in Montreal. Neither team getting anything done on the power play. I mean, I got to see, Stu, the power play the Sabres rolled out in Prague, and it hasn't gotten any better since they got it back across the pond here. They're 0 for 14 on the power play, so they got to get that better. But I want to start with what happened with the Sabres in practice the other day. A little bit of a battle there between the captain, Rasmus Dahlin, and Peyton Krebs. Dahlin comes in and gives the real heavy hip check. I mean, you don't see that in games, more or less in practice. And apparently Dahlin wasn't happy with with Krebs from an earlier moment in the practice.
High stick or something.
To me, a team like Buffalo, which has not, and here let's go to what Lindy said first. Sure. Boys will be boys. Raz got bumped the drill before, and then even the score. I wouldn't read too much into it. We want competitive practices, and that's where I want to go with you, because I saw Buffalo practice over in Prague a couple of days. This is a team that has missed the playoffs for more than a decade now, right? I think you want to have more competitive practice. They need more competitive practices in Buffalo.
100%.
And so, like, as long as no one gets hurt, I mean, and this was, I mean, that was no joke.
That's a good-sized if.
Yeah.
That's a good-sized if.
That's right. There's no guarantees nobody's getting hurt with that. But give me your thoughts on this kind of play in practice that, you know.
JD, if you could just run it again, the collision, and I want to make just a real quick point about this, and it supports what you're talking about. So Dahlin makes that hit. Watch him right after. Like, he's not waiting for response.
He's not.
Like, he's not, hey, I hit you, what are you going to do? But, like, he wants to engage. He's not done. There's more. Point I'm making is there's a whole lot of passion. There's a whole lot of compete behind that. And here's the thing, you know, you can't sleepwalk through practice and then expect to flip a switch come game time in the NHL, and then you're going to play competitive, fiery hockey at that moment. There has to be that level of compete, that level of passion that comes to, yes, even practice. I think practice is even more precious to today's NHLer because the opportunity to do so is so rare. But you correct mistakes, you drive up your level of intensity. So, you know, important, engaged, meaningful practice is critical. And a lack of it, and perhaps this is part of what the Sabres have had a challenge with in the past, lack of practice like that contributes to just poor performance on the ice. So I'm with you. I love it. It was a regular occurrence in my era, guys getting into it like this. And here's the thing, you know, for the casual observer, this stuff does not carry over, but beyond that moment in time, it's all business on the ice. Guys, you know, you say your sorries, you move beyond it. It's all, you know, it's all part of the culture, really, of playing the game at its highest level.
You know, I brought it up the other day when this first happened. I would go to the Devils practices all the time in the early 2000s when they had Scotty Stevens and Kenny Danico in that group. And they would do those 3-on-3 drills below the dots. And it was warfare there amongst their group. I mean, because Scotty Stevens, that was the only way he knew how to play. And Kenny Danico was the same thing. And, you know, Bobby Holik, big, strong forwards. And those guys really practiced hard against one another. I'd ask you, you spent some time with the Detroit Red Wings, who had a really good club in their era. You spent some time with some really good teams at different points of your career. Is it different? Did you notice a different thing with good teams, how they practiced, and teams that were also Rans, how they went about their business?
Yeah, it was a lackluster kind of approach for the clubs that weren't terribly competitive or fell short of what they were capable of doing, without question. I mean, I was a member of the Detroit Red Wings, and this is just kind of on the brink of them going on, you know, a series of cup wins in the modern era. But this is a group that took their practice very, very seriously. I remember Sean Burr and I, it was an optional skate on an off day, a non-game day, and Bursey and I ended up getting nose to nose over a collision that occurred between the two of us. You know, point being, like, you put a bunch of men out there, boys and men out there, that, you know, that have a hearty zest and vigor for playing this game, that can happen. But, you know, that's part of the mentality, the DNA that gets you to that level of the game. So, you know, it's going to be expressed from time to time, and it's a natural part of doing business in the NHL. Even teammates will, you know, lock horns from time to time.
Mix it up.
For sure.
We'll see how that impacts the Sabres on the ice as they take on the Pittsburgh Penguins tonight. Should be a good one. TNT has that one for you. When we come back, our buddy Steve Kouleas joins the program. That's next on First Shift. Now here's a look at what goes on in Steve Kouleas' basement.
Oh, my stars.
I mean, he's got it all going down there. A lot of screens. He's got a deal with Samsung, apparently, or somebody, and he's got a lot of screens. He's got I don't know what's in that glass next to the laptop, but he's keeping it all covered, and we are joined again by the aforementioned Steve Kouleas from NHL Network Radio, the master of the discussion room. And what was going on last night in there? You had a lot happening.
I did, and it was beer. I mean, there's nothing to hide it. I mean, if we get a beer sponsor, we'll mention a name or two. But first of all, it's great to see Stu. EJ, I got to be honest with you. I went over the game film. I wasn't very good last week, and I blame Bruce Boudreau. I was not good last week. I will be better this week, and that's the Hockey Basement. I have 4 on the go. I want a 5th. TVs are cheap right now, EJ.
Yeah, they are. They are. They are. So you were watching last night, the Oilers. It's been a rough start here. I mean, 3 goals, 15 against going into last night, down 2-0 early. What did you make of their comeback victory in OT?
Well, it's about time. They started the season 3 games in a period too late, and they needed the Janmarks, the Henriques, the Connor Browns to kind of get them. And that's great. You know what? They don't want to be top heavy. We have no issue with any of their forwards. They'll eventually fix the D by March 7th, I would think. I think their give-a-rip meter was not turned on, and they were sulking. They were in a Florida swampland, I think. And guess what? They started moving their feet. They started moving the puck, and then these guys went to work, and they dazzle when they're on their game. And I do think, to the naked eye, I thought it was a penalty live on Sanheim. The replay actually shows that the referees made a good non-call there. In the moment, I thought, oh my God, but you know what? The Oilers pulled it out.
You know, and I got the same sense. I go back even to the prior game, Cooley, the Calgary game. Thought the club played a pretty good, get up for the Battle of Alberta and maybe an opportunity to kind of solve your problems on an 0-2 start, Edmonton. But, play a solid 20 minutes, and then it's kind of like they just failed to follow through on periods 2 and 3, and Calgary eventually takes that episode of the Battle of Alberta, and able to ride it to a win. But the point I want to make or ask you about is, where do you see in all this, and of course, the bottom 6 really, I think, helped elevate their game last night. But where do you see Connor and Draisaitl at this point, given the lackluster start? Where's their game at?
Well, it hasn't been very good. I mean, I called Connor out on the show yesterday, and, I love the guy. If I had a son, I want it to be him. But he hadn't been very good, and he was in a daze, and he was sulking. And I get it. We talk about Stanley Cup hangover. It's not just for the team that wins. It can be for the team that loses as well. So I think that happened as far as the Oilers are concerned. And then they can't turn it on and off like the 80s Oilers. This is not 86 where they've already made the playoffs. They've already burnt the candle 2 years ago late, and they didn't finish first. They burnt it last year, 2-9-1 start. It's supposed to be different and better this year. So they started the season 3 games in a period late. I think they should be separated, though, guys. The schedule only gets harder. And I think just putting them together to solve all their problems, it doesn't solve their problems. It has to be 97 first line, 29 on the second line, and allow this team to spread things out, not the nuclear option.
Yeah, what's interesting? They got Nashville coming up. The Preds are a team. Stu, right, you're down in Nashville. They went out and made these acquisitions in the offseason. They got their doors blown off in the third period by Seattle last night. And, now they have Edmonton coming in. And Edmonton, you look at the numbers historically over the last couple of years, the Oilers have really done a number on Nashville. Yeah. That's going to be an interesting game Thursday, Stu.
I think it will be. And it feels like, to me, in spite of how on paper we look at Nashville and we thought, boy, they really had the sexiest, the splashiest of free agent seasons last summer. But they might be one of those teams, in spite of the fact that you've gone out, you've acquired 3 key parts in a Marchessault, in a Stamkos, in a Brady Shea. Maybe it's going to take a little while to kind of assimilate everybody into the roster. They look like they're going to be a while kind of figuring out their game, in my opinion.
Interesting. Well, let me ask you, Steve, about the Leafs, because one of the things you wanted to talk about today was the Toronto Maple Leafs with the need to win that Atlantic division. I mean, to me, I don't know if I necessarily agree with you. They need to make the playoffs. Why do you feel they need to win the division?
I think if they win the division, EJ, it shows that the changes they've made, layering their lineup even down to Reeves, who they already had, and a Steven Lorentz, shows that the Tanev, eventually Hakanpää, that Berube's system is working, which is kind of not the swarm that Keith had, kind of a man-on-man with some protection, that they can win low-scoring games. And if they finish first, it showed they had a very good regular season, and it voids Boston, Florida in the 2-3. If they finish third, it means they didn't have that great a year, then they got to play Boston or Florida, and then play them again. I think it's delusional to think the Leafs are going to beat Boston, then Florida, then New Jersey, or the Rangers. They win the division. They watch them play in a 2-3, I would think, and it shows that the moves that they made and their structure, right, guys, would have been working for them. And the only time they won the division is the North. That doesn't count to me. They haven't won it under the Matthews administration.
That does not count. That does not count. I agree with you on that. It does not count. And you won me over. I think he makes a great point.
No, I do.
To avoid having to play both those teams.
Yeah, and the 2-3 matchup, notoriously difficult in the new format, without question. Speaking on the Leafs, speaking on a different segment of their roster, OEL acquired over the offseason. Chris Tanev comes in. How do you feel about the D-core? To me, those are important adds, and these guys look like they're fitting in rather seamlessly in the early going.
Great point by you. And I add Hakanpää if he's healthy, because him and Lindell were the number one shorthanded and the least penalty killing has stunk. It stunk going back to losing against Boston, losing against Florida, even losing against Tampa. They won one playoff series in 20 years, for gosh sakes. So the way I look at it is this. They took 3 players off the Stanley Cup champion Panthers to get better, and their defense is the best it's been in the Matthews administration. And they're playing that way as well. Look, Matthews is killing penalties. Who said that, EJ? Me and you last year. He had 3 minutes, on the second game of the year? He averaged 40 seconds last year. So team defense, adding defensemen like Tanev and OEL, even though they're older. Hakanpää, if he's healthy, looks like Liljegren is being showcased for a trade. They are better. And I think the one thing is this. Boston lost up front, got better on the blue line. Florida lost a lot of good players. The time is nigh for the Leafs. If they don't win the division this year, maybe it's not meant to be.
You know what? It's funny you bring that up about the penalty killing for Matthews, because Craig Berube's got connection to Ken Hitchcock, right, in his coaching legacy there. And Mike Modano was on the show yesterday. He talked about the fact that Hitch wanted a little more stop and start in Mike's game, and he put him on the penalty kill to kind of force him to do that a little bit more, and it helped his overall game. So maybe that's the plan here with Matthews and Berube. Before we let you go, I got to ask you about surprise, because like every year, right, we see somebody kind of come out of nowhere at the start of the season. There's bad starts, there's good starts. What's the biggest surprise for you so far?
Oh, I think the Calgary Flames. It shows when you have an attention to detail defensively. We can't score. What should we do? How about collapse in front of the net and protect your goalies? And it's worked. Other than the first game, they did score themselves to a 6-5 victory, but the high danger chances are down the 5-on-5. And I love what Rasmus Andersson said today about collapsing and reloading. Defense, after an offensive chance doesn't work, coming back and really blocking shots and protecting the house, kind of the Tortorella style. You can be there, but not be there. And as you saw Blake Coleman block a shot, and you just saw, I mean, look how Anderson has played. Look at Huberdeau. When your third line left, he's back, guys. Huberdeau, is it sustainable? Will it last? Probably not. But at least it's fun in the early going to see what they have. And basically all of this without Sharon Govich, who we could argue is one of their top players. So I think you're going to see the Flames try to win uglier, better defense. And if they get offense from some of I think Anthony Mantha, Huberdeau's back. Anthony Mantha is saved his career, kind of. The game that he played the other night was one of the best games I've ever seen him play in scrapping. Yeah. So it's fun. It's not going to last. So if you have the stock, sell.
I'm bullish on this roster, Cooley. Just in terms of the skating component, right? Underrated D-core in Rasmus Andersson and a Uyghur. I think there's depth there. We're seeing this early. Can they get to a top 8 spot with Wolf and Vladar as a tandem?
They'd have to play that type of defense for a long, long time. So Wolf has to be the guy. His schedule's been a little bit easier and his numbers are better right now, but you play the teams that you have in front of you. They hope that Wolf will be the next Markstrom or Kiprasov there. I think the longer they stay in it, they can figure out what they want to do with players who might want to leave. It's about the building in Calgary, the new one eventually. Like, is Kadri going to wait this thing out? Do they eat like $1 million or $2 million and then, a Utah that we've mentioned before? The longer they're in it, it's better for everyone. and then the veterans can decide what their future wants to be. So enjoy it. And it's great to have us, like Edmonton, Colorado start, and then Calgary. Surprises are great, EJ and Stu. I love surprises.
Yeah, the first part of the year, we focus in on who's playing bad and who's playing well, and we do get surprises on both ends, and the Calgary Flames have been a good story so far this season. Cooley, thanks for the time, buddy. We'll see you next week.
Hey, I was way better this week. I blame Bruce. First prediction of the year. It's an easy one. Matthews scores.
All right, there you go. Well, listen, it's always easy to blame the coach. We've seen that for many, many years. So poor Bruce gets blamed. I'm sure he'll have a retort at some point during the season. Well, you know, speaking about lighting the lamp, how about when a goalie lights the lamp? Yeah, it was Filip Gustavsson.
There you go.
On target last night for the Wild. We'll talk about that next on First Shift. You didn't think we were going to get through the whole show without talking about this, did you? Filip Gustavsson from downtown. Bullseye.
Goalie goal for Gus. Goalie goal for Gus. How about that?
Hey, little assist there for the Blues. I mean, I think that was Buchnevich shooting it right to his glove.
I was going to say, like, that's a gift.
Yeah.
An absolute gift. I loved, Gus shared with us the conversation he had with Fleury back at the bench.
Told him,
hey,
go for it.
We're up 2,
This is the time.
And Gustafsson's like, yeah, I should take a crack at that.
You saw the last 5 goalie goals. How about this one? March 6, 96. Stu, you were involved. You were on the Red Wings when Chris Osgood buried one.
I was. This is my Red Wings. He had a great shot. Ozzy had an amazing shot. That's my Red Wings in the old mall, Hartford, Connecticut.
That's right. Yeah.
And Ozzy, that was the first goalie goal of his career. But here's the troubling part of that.
Yeah.
Here's the troubling part of that. At that moment, he eclipsed or moved above Stu Grimson on the goal-scoring leaders board for the Detroit Red Wings.
Looks like he looks
as a goaltender, if we didn't mention that.
Looks like he finished that way. Who put the...
Where's JD going?
JD is he putting up those stats?
Oh, no, this couldn't be.
Yeah, probably a good idea to move on. I'm the guy in the locked room with him, and you're running. What good does that do anybody? All right, JD. We'll see you all tomorrow. Thank you, Stu.
Good one.